everyone. I'm Maritza and welcome to my podcast, Things You Can't Unhear. As a presenter with a focus on wellness, I have interviewed very many health professionals in my time and heard stories that have opened my eyes about the world we live in today. But I found the best bits that I take home with me and the things I heard that have changed my life are usually when the recording shuts off and we can talk in length behind the scenes. And that's the information that I want to share with you on this podcast. All right, it's about time I gave the men in the world some airtime on this podcast. And today I have Craig Harper with me. He's one of Australia's leading presenters and educators in the areas of health, resilience, addiction, and personal transformation, to name a few. And in addition to his many public speaking roles and radio shows, we also work on a wellness show together called Get a Life on Foxtel. Hi, Craig.
Hi, Maritza. Thanks for having me.
Well, actually, thanks for having me. You're hosting us today in your studio. Very kind of you.
Well, you're hosting me while I am hosting you. It's a mutual hosting. So we are in my studio in Hampton, but it is your show. So I'm putty in your hands.
We're doing well so far, aren't we? Now, it seems in your work that you've made it your mission to help people to achieve their best and most purposeful lives. How did you grow? What was your journey to get to where you are today?
Wow, that's a massive question. I don't know where to start, but I guess what was crucial for me growing up was that I grew up in the country, so I had a lot of freedom. I had a lot of people around me who were pretty cool. I was always a curious kid, but maybe interestingly, I was a morbidly obese kid. So from when I was very young to when I was 14, I was called Jumbo at school. So parents call me Jumbo, teachers, kids, because I was overweight. And that was, it's funny. It sounds terrible. People are like, oh, my God, poor little Jumbo. And it was, it wasn't awesome, but it was actually all right. People weren't really, it would never happen now, I know, but there was not a lot of malice in it. There probably was from a few people, but the bottom line was my overweight state, my obesity became kind of my label, and that was a challenge for me. And I went to a private boys' school, and I was always challenged in the sense that we had, there was an emphasis on sport, and because I was so big, I was no good at sport, and because we had compulsory cross-country runs every week of the year from year 7 onwards. And so by the end of year 8, I weighed 90 or a little bit over 90 kilos at about 5'7" or something, 5'8" maybe. And I would come 130th out of 130 every week because I was so fat I couldn't run, so I would walk. So that was kind of, and that's a physical thing, but it's also an emotional, psychological and sociological thing. And I just had a couple of experiences which were just a little bit gut-wrenching for that at that stage. You're 14 years old, so you really haven't experienced much, and one of those was the year 8 swimming sports, where I was, through no fault of anyone else's, but humiliated standing up on, in my fat little body on top of the lane 8 starting blocks, and just having this moment where I went, I don't want to do this again. I hate the way I look. I hate the way I feel. I hate being this person in this body with all these people looking at me. And it's interesting. You said to me before, we're in my studio, what books do you like? And one of the books I pointed out to you was by Malcolm Gladwell called The Tipping Point. And I believe that for a lot of us, there's change really happens when we reach an internal tipping point. And for me, that day on those blocks, that moment in time, that for me was a light bulb or a knife in the heart or something where I went, no, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not gonna be this fat kid anymore. And I got home, and for the first time in my life, I went for a run. I'd never actually, I couldn't really run well because I was 30 kilograms overweight. But anyway, I started to run, and I really started to try where I'd never really tried before. And I just reduced I didn't know what I was doing, right? I'm 14 years old living in Latrobe Valley. So I just essentially ate the same food, but I ate about a third. So instead of eating 3X, I ate X. And the weight started to fall off. I kept running. I got fitter. I lost more weight. It became easier. And that was kind of the genesis for me beginning to understand this thing called transformation and the relationship between psychology and physiology and, exploring potential and what happens when what can happen when you set your mind to doing something. And that opened a door on, like lots of stuff in my life is helping people change stuff and understanding their potential and exploring their potential.
So you've definitely turned that around. You're a picture of health now. You are fit. You've made sports science your whole life. You've made helping people your whole life. Sometimes it takes these dark moments or these moments in our life to say, this is the thing that's changed me. This is the thing that's guided me into the perfect position to live my life in. And that's what you've done. How do you share this with other people? How do you share the insights that you've learned?
Well, all you can do is share what you know. And so I never stand in front of people and go, I know everything, pay attention. So what I do is I say literally something like this. All right, so I've been doing this. I've been helping people change stuff since I was 18, which is when I started working in gyms. Everyone comes to a gym to change something. Nobody hands over their $1,000 and says, I want to look the same in 6 months. Everybody wants to be different. So the job is essentially to help people be different. And at 55, I'm still helping people be different. And so whether or not that's with their body, their thinking, their habits, their behavior, their lifestyle, their financial situation, their internal reality, their behavioral operating system, their blueprint for life or whatever it is, I'm always talking to people about that stuff. And specifically to your question, I try to help people in a way which is really user-friendly and really relatable and understandable, because the moment that you start talking about things in a way using a language or at a level that doesn't connect with or relate to people, then it doesn't matter. As I said to you also before we started, it doesn't matter if you've got great information and content if you're not creating connection. So I really have an emphasis on being understandable and relatable while trying to help people, with strategies and ideas and, I guess, insights and information that's potentially transformational.
It's so true that you are always yourself and you're always so authentic. And with change and how you help people to do that, it's always really hard to make that first step to change. And change can be for a number of different things. It can be changing the way we think of ourselves, our thought patterns, things that we eat. How do we change in a way that it sticks and it lasts? Because some people change for 3 months and they've lost all this weight or they're thinking differently, but then they fall back into old patterns. What's your advice for people who want to make it stick and last the distance?
That's a good question. So let's ask a couple of questions before we answer that question, or let's ask a couple of questions which essentially unpack that one question. So the thing that a lot of people do is they will change their behavior. They will change for example, let's talk about bodies and food and fitness because we all relate a bit, right? So most people that would listen to this, if you said, would you like to be a bit fitter, healthier, leaner, one of them, some of them, all of them, most people are going to go, yeah, I wouldn't mind. All right, cool. So, and then if we said, how many of you have lost weight and regained it? Or how many of you have got fitter, then lost the fitness, or healthier, then unhealthier, or in the zone or out of the zone, motivated, demotivated? That's everyone. That's the human condition. And so what we do is we tend to think that motivation is the key. We tend to rely on this emotional state that we call motivation. So when we talk about motivation, often there's dialogue around that is something like, I am excited, I am motivated, I am pumped, I am inspired, I'm in the zone, and we're talking about this state that I am in. And because I am motivated and inspired, I am now doing this thing. I'm doing this thing because I'm inspired. Then the question is, well, what happens on Friday when you're not inspired? And what happens on Friday for most people is the behavior stops. So the challenge is, and what you've asked is actually the root of understanding change and creating lasting change. So we can unpack it a bit more if you want, but the simple answer is we need to find a way to keep doing the thing that works when we can't be bothered.
Yeah, that's right.
And that state of I can't be bothered, that's a very human state and normal state. So if I only do the thing that works when I'm in the zone, well, then I'm never going to create lasting results because I'm never going to be in the zone all the time. So the challenge for us is to find a way to stay proactive and productive and effective. In other words, doing the thing that aligns with our goals and path and purpose and truth when we can't be stuffed, right? And the answer to your question specifically is we create hardwired behaviors, and we call those things habits. So when we create a new operating system, like for real, not a temporary one because I'm in the zone, or I'm doing the 10-week body transformation, or my wedding's coming up, or my school reunion, or my birthday, or whatever, which tends to be a temporary shift in behavior followed by a reverting to where we were. But rather when we say, you know what, this is my new normal, right? I'm not on a kick. I'm not doing a diet. I'm not on a 10-week anything. What I'm doing is I am actually thinking and behaving differently, and I am creating a new relationship with food, with exercise, whatever it is, with money, with work, with my husband, with my wife, with this addiction, with the way that I relate to my body. And that starts with honesty and awareness and humility and courage, because it's not fun. It's not quick. It's not easy. It's not painless, you know? And so for me to become from Jumbo, the fat kid, the 90 kilo, coming last to I lost 30 kilos in 15 weeks and then continued to run. And there's just work, you know, and I'm not a natural athlete, and I'm not naturally lean, and I'm not naturally good at many things. But you just go, all right, well, what is it that I want really? Okay, well, what I really want is I want to be in a body, or I want to be in a health state, or I want to be in a financial position, or I want to be in a career, or I want to be in this kind of relationship that requires X, Y, Z. So X, Y, Z needs to be my normal, not the thing that I do when I'm excited and pumped, because, you know, permanent change comes from permanent behavior.
Would you say it's essential to have that mind, body and spirit all connected into this purpose? Do you think that's essential to having and maintaining that growth and that way of life?
100%. Everything, transformation is an inside-out journey. So, you know, let's say, for example, you have got, let's just do a weird example. So you go, you know what, Craig, I want to be a singer. And let's say you've got that's what I want to do. And you've got a phenomenal voice, right?
Not likely, unfortunately.
Let's just pretend
like
in this parallel universe. And you've got an amazing voice. You've got a God-given talent. It's incredible. You've got this incredible, 5-octave range, and you can sing like an angel. But there's a couple of things in this story. One is you are so incredibly fearful, you won't take any chances. You won't open your mouth you won't step on stage. And on top of that, it's kind of hard work. You don't really like hard work. And also that girl said once to you 5 years ago that you sound like a screeching budgie. So there's that, and you remember that, right? And so what there is there's the innate ability that you have to be this phenomenal world-class singer. That's there, right? That's not going anywhere. That's just ability. But then there's all the emotional and psychological variables around that, which will either get you where you want to go or sabotage you. Mm-hmm. Because having that ability to sing beautifully does not guarantee anything except that you can sing beautifully. So what I care with people is what you do with that voice. What I care with people is what you do with that genetic potential, what you do with that amazing mind of yours, what you do with that sporting talent that's hardwired into you. Because I know lots of talented people who have gone nowhere. And I know lots of people with not so much talent who are unbelievably high achievers.
And taking it the distance.
Yeah, like I'm not talented. I'm not a very talented person. I'm not genetically gifted. I'm not uber smart. I'm not anything. If I have a gift, it's probably I can write reasonably well and talk okay. I'm not a bad communicator. Other than that, not much. And so for me, trying to figure out how does life work and how do I work and how do people work and how does success work and what is success, it's always been about, for me personally, getting the most out of me. Like how do I build this? Like my first business was a personal training centre when there weren't any. There weren't any in Australia. And everyone's like, well, that won't work. I'm like, I think it will. They're like, sure won't. It worked.
Well, there's 15 in every street.
Now that's right. I've got 4 in my house, But it's one about having, that ability and that want and that desire. But then on top of that, it's really about, will I do the work?
That's right.
Because we are very much an instant gratification culture and mindset.
And it's getting more so now with technology.
Oh, yeah, I want to look awesome. I don't want to work hard, though, and I don't want it to take long, and I don't want it to be painful, and I don't want to be inconvenienced, and I still want to eat cake, and I still okay. Well, like, what you want is magic. It's right. Everything comes at a cost. Like, I'm 55 and I don't have great genetics, but I'm very lean and I'm in very good shape. I don't say this out of ego. I say that this is just where I'm at. But the reason that I'm lean and in good shape and fit and strong is because I do the things that create that result. I don't drink alcohol. I don't eat junk. I don't eat cake. I don't eat bread. I don't eat sugar. I've never had alcohol. I've never been drunk. I've never used drugs. I've never been high. And I'm not saying everyone should do what I do, but I'm saying I've figured out what works for my body, so that's what I do. Should you do that? No, you should do what works for you. But you can't eat junk, or you can't make a 4 out of 10 effort and go, wow, where's my 9 out of 10 result? Doesn't work.
Now I'm looking at all these books here. Would you call yourself a spiritual person, or would you call yourself sort of conscious or awake?
This is a good question too. Very good questions. I like these are not typical questions, and they make me think. So I think this is what I think, and people will agree and disagree. I feel like we are all mental, emotional, or psychological, emotional, creative, physical, spiritual beings, right? That's what I think. And I just, look, I grew up in a very religious paradigm, very religious household, and I don't subscribe to that particular paradigm or mindset anymore. I have no resentment towards it. A lot of it was great. I learned a lot. I have respect for religion, and I have respect for different theologies and philosophies and ideologies. Not all, of course, but most. And for me, being spiritual is, it's interesting you asked this, because I was doing some notes and I was writing for some of my workshops, and Melissa, who's in the room at the moment and who's my business partner and runs my life and panels, produces my podcast, we've spoken about this a fair bit. And I said, I feel like a bit of a fraud because I talk about the head stuff and the body stuff and the heart stuff and the social stuff, but the spiritual stuff, I'm just not sure how to open the door, because I don't want people to go, oh my God, he's a weirdo, or this or that. And I'm definitely not a weirdo, but for me there's a belief and there's an understanding that there's something bigger than me. And so for me, being spiritual means operating from a place of love, operating from a place where there is nothing practically or financially in it for me. So when I am serving and when I am genuinely compassionate, when no one's looking, like I'm not doing this because, oh yeah, look how spiritual he is, right? And I have done that because I have an ego. And so my constant battle, because I'm human and because I'm flawed, is squashing my ego, operating from a place of love, and having a purpose bigger than me, because I don't need, in inverted commas, any more money. I don't need more stuff. I don't need another telly. I don't need another car. I don't need more stuff. For me, I'm way more interested in somebody's emotional and spiritual bank account than I am what they drive or what they look like or their six-pack or their body composition.
And you can tell that about you. But I think what keeps you really relatable for people who aren't spiritual is that you don't bring that in, and it's still the same message of a spiritual teacher. It's exactly the same message what you're teaching. You're teaching people to look within rather than look outside of themselves. You're teaching people to find their purpose and their why. It's all the same messages, but you're just doing it on a level where everyone can relate to it. And I think that's quite refreshing. And I think that's your point of difference. I think that's fabulous.
Yeah, I think my job is to love people. My job is not to enforce any ideology on anyone. And when someone asks me, I go, well, this is what I think. There's something bigger and more powerful and more loving and more amazing than me. I don't know what you want to call that. Call it what you want, whether it's God or whether it's consciousness or whether it's I don't know. But for me, there are times when I feel like I'm tapping into something that's much more intelligent than I am, where I have an idea or a thought or a creative expression, or I've done gigs where, when I say gigs, I mean workshops or conferences or whatever, where something happens and there's just a different energy in the room, where there's a level of connection, there's an energetic exchange that goes on that is way more than just a bloke turning up to do a presentation. And there are people crying, and there are people that come up and want a hug, and there are people that tell you stuff they've never told anyone and they met you 3 minutes ago. There's something in that. And I think one of the things that we do is we try to understand and explain something that is almost not understandable or explainable through the construct of our thinking. So the mind is really, when you think about spirituality in the sense that a lot of us experience, it doesn't make sense, in inverted commas, because you can't see it, feel it, touch it, measure it.
It's almost the beauty of it,
I can't analyze it. Let me quantify that. What are the analytics on that so that I can put it under the mind? Well, not everything needs to make sense, because even the term makes sense to who? Well, you, based on your understanding. What makes you think you understand everything or ever will or need to? So for me, a big challenge is, and I'm a scientist and I'm just about to start a PhD in neuroscience, but even for me who lives in that space, I know that there's an infinite amount of things that we will never understand, and that, like, I am acutely aware of the tininess of my understanding.
And how small we are in the universe.
The tininess of all of us, but we think, and we're smart, we're talented, but, we don't know. We're just guessing.
I recently interviewed Neil Donald Walsh. He's a modern day spiritual leader. He's written many books on, he had a dialogue with God, conversations with God. And he said, whatever you want to be more of, be the source of it in someone else's life and watch it come into yours.
I love that title. That's like maybe 20 years old or 25, is that?
Exactly.
That was massive.
99.
That was massive, that book.
Yeah, absolutely massive. And he's just released the 4th installment, which is called Awaken the Species. But I think it's so important that we impact other people's lives to make an impact on our own. And so it's almost giving what you want to receive. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, well, for me, my version of that is just having a purpose bigger than you. And I always say to people, and they're sick, my audience is sick of it, I tried selfishness, it didn't work. And I think we're hardwired for selfishness. Yeah. Like, we're taught, look after number one.
Yeah.
Well, kind of. I mean, look after you, but not only you. It's like you get to the point where you go, well, I'm pretty good. I got lots of, I'm okay. Yeah. And not everyone is okay, and that's different. But I think most of the people that listen to me and read me and follow me, and I would think most of the people that do that for you too, I think most of us, most of the time, we're not in a terrible place. Like, we can actually take some time and effort. I forget the exact amount. I think it's it'll come to me, but I think it's 14 minutes and 24 seconds. 14 minutes and 24 seconds is 1% of your day. So there's 1,440 minutes in a day. I can tell you that for sure. Right. Just in case you're wondering. But I always say to people, imagine if you spent 1%, right? Not 99, 1% of your day, which is give or take 14 and a half minutes, all about someone else.
Exactly.
Or maybe it's not about that. Maybe it's about you just spend 14 and a half minutes still. No phone, just breathing, just letting go, just trying not to think, or not even trying not to think, but letting go, becoming the observer of your thoughts. Because I think one of the challenges for us is that we are so busy being busy that we wake up in a minute and now we're 3 years down the track. And now I'm still having the same internal dialogue. I'm still doing the things I know I probably shouldn't do. I still haven't stepped up, owned up and looked up. I'm still doing those same destructive things that I've been wanting to change for a long time. And so I think, getting ourselves or creating some space for us to be present and aware is a great thing, because it's hard to be objective, if not impossible, to be objective about the thing you are in the middle of, because it's you. It's like we always find clarity, or a level of clarity and a level of perspective, when we are away, in inverted commas, from our life. Like when you're geographically away. It's Christmas, or you're on holidays, or for me, it's when I'm interstate and I'm traveling and I'm doing stuff and I'm not in my normal routine or my normal house or my normal bed with my normal people, right? It's things are different, and I don't know why that is, but I definitely have a different sense of things when I'm in a different place, and so sometimes it's good to just stop doing everything, hit the pause button, and find some. Even if it's just find some metaphoric space.
What tips or what techniques do you use to be mindful in your own personal life?
Well, just what I said then, but also I think mindfulness is, I think when people talk about mindfulness a lot, they're almost, that's terms almost colliding with meditation.
That's so true.
I think mindfulness can be a permanent state where not so you're meditating and you're enlightened all day.
But you're present.
All the time. Like I would think right now I'm mindful. I'm in a space of mindfulness right now because I want to be very, very present with you. And I want to do the best for you and for me and for the people who hear this, so that I'm authentic, and so that we're not just, hey, let's do a podcast and talk about stuff and that's another one in the can. Like, that is what happens a lot. And I go, well, let's not do that. Let's not do that. Let's so every time I'm doing something like this, it's almost like I want this to be the best experience that I can possibly make it for the people that will hear it.
I'm very present too right now, and I almost feel very, calm and centered and relaxed. But it takes one thing, a distraction outside to pull you out of that. I know when I'm driving here on the way, my mind's going 100 miles an hour. I'm thinking of 14 different things at once. I mean, I should really just be focused and present. And it's just pulling yourself back, getting those constant reminders that can be really difficult to bring you back there.
Yeah. Awareness starts with our lack of awareness.
Yeah, well, that's true.
And it starts by being aware of that, and you're aware of it. And what you're doing is human, but it's a, for me who teaches all this stuff, I am as flawed or more flawed than the people I teach. So, but I'm always aware of coming back to that. For me, my home base has got to be love. And if I'm doing something that, it's not, if I'm talking crap with someone, we're having fun and we're being silly and humorous, or, it's not like all day I'm sitting around being Jesus, or the Dalai Lama or, whoever. But what I mean is, in terms of the way that I generally treat people and the way that I generally relate and connect and do what I do and live my life and make my decisions, if that isn't for the most part coming from a representation of love, be that kindness, be that generosity, be that service, be that humility, then I need to pull my head in and come back and be quiet and get out of ego and get back and meditate and find space.
So true. It's important we don't put labels on ourselves as well, I think, and it's so hard not to do. Recently I went to a health retreat at Gwingana and we were told not to talk to any of the other guests if we were talking about our work. We were not to engage in a networking capacity.
Wow.
So when we're sitting around the table with strangers, we had to only talk to each other based on our personalities. We weren't allowed to ask, what do you do for a living, or, where do you live? So we couldn't put those labels on ourselves. Do you think labels really restrict us in finding our own inner self?
Wow. Such good questions, Melissa, down there nodding her
They're
head.
hard to answer.
No, I love that question. Well, I talk about labels and I talk about identity all the time. And, a very common conversation that I've had over the years is I would sit down with somebody and I'd go, all right, well, tell me about you. And the person would then tell me about their job. I go, no, don't tell me about your title or your role or your job. Tell me about you. And then they'd tell me about where they went to school. I'd go, don't tell me about your academic background. Tell me about you. Then they'd tell me what they drive or where they live or how many children they have. I go, look, they're all cool things, but, you are not a job, you are not a career, you are not a car, you are not a house, you are not a brand, you are not your children. All those things, well done, congrats, you're a human, but tell me about you. They don't know what to tell me because they find their identity in things. And so one of the ongoing challenges for us is to figure out who we are beyond our things, because we get often our sense of self and security and self-worth from, like for me when I was young, my body. When I was a bodybuilder, and all after I was fat, I became super fit. And then I went, wow, I'm fit, look at me. And people are like, wow, Harps, you're fit, and look at you, and you've got abs, and wow, you're a little bit amazing. I'm like, yes, I am, say more. Right? And then I started getting muscle. They're like, wow, you've got muscles, you're amazing. I'm like, keep going, right?
Loving it.
Because I was insecure, and I had I needed love, and I needed attention, and I needed approval, because my driver was fear and insecurity. And so, and then I got my identity was Craig the bloke with the muscles, and then it was Craig the bloke who owned the business, and Craig who drove that or did, all that kind of stuff, which we all do. And by the way, nothing wrong with owning a business, driving a great car, or having an awesome body, unless that becomes your identity, your personal identity. Because the problem with having your identity or your sense of self rooted in something that isn't you, like a job or a car or a brand, is that stuff can disappear.
Yeah,
and when that disappears, you're done, dude, because you don't know who you are, because you thought you were that car. You thought you were those muscles. And now you've torn your pec like I did. I ruptured my pec. I tore it off the bone. I couldn't train. You might as well have just said to me, Craig, you can't breathe. You can't breathe now. What? It's like someone took my oxygen, and I just watched my chest and my shoulder and my arm shrink for 3 months until I could, and it was catastrophic because I didn't know who I was beyond my stupid, muscles. But that's just, and I think that, all of this just starts with, this journey is just, it's an ongoing journey of self-awareness and honesty. And do I still do dumb stuff? Of course I do, But I got to a point where I realized, all right, so I've done not all, but a lot of the things that I wanted to do. I'm making good money. I've done some cool things, worked in radio, worked in telly, written for the Herald Sun, written a book or two, been in great shape, been popular, all that stuff. But in the middle of all of that, I'm still insecure. What's going on? I've still got stuff. I've still got issues. And on some level, it's no better. So what is going on? And I think what's going on for a lot of us is we have an external focus and a lack of internal awareness.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
So we have, we have all these moving parts in our life, and we think, well, you know what? Because think about this, when we go, oh, well, I want, and I'm having a bit of fun here, but I want a podcast, and I want to have 10 or 20,000 listeners, right? And I want 10 or 20,000 listeners because I want to create connection with people. And once I've got 10 or 20,000 listeners per episode, then I'm going to be able to monetize it. When I can monetize it, then I can make money from the thing I love. And then I can buy stuff. And then I've got that. But all of that we want to do because on a level we think it'll make our life better and us happier. We don't go, I want to start a podcast because I think I'll be more miserable.
That's so true.
Right?
Yeah,
we don't
we
don't buy a dress because we think, oh, I'm going to look rubbish in this. We think I look good in this, which is why we buy it. And then if I look good in it, I'm going to be happier for 8 minutes. Then I need another one because I've worn that one, right? Or I'm going to drive this, or I'm going to, I remember I was super insecure. I went to school. I went to university in my 30s, got a degree in exercise science, came out, aced it, did great, became a lecturer in the course that I just completed, still insecure. I'm like, all right, well, that wasn't it, right? Because all of my focus was external. When I get that thing, when I do that thing, when I own that thing, when I achieve that thing, when those people see me do X and Y, then, like, why do we focus on all that external stuff? Because we've got an internal void. Mm-hmm. And we think the external achievements or acquisitions will fill that hole.
We've got to choose now, right?
You've got to coexist. You've got to coexist between what's happening inside and outside. And again, nothing wrong with building an awesome podcast. Nothing wrong with being, in great shape, driving. No, they're all great things. But don't confuse those things with the meaning of your life and who you are.
That's why I love you, Craig. You're so relatable and real and just to the minute. You make it so right now for us to easily understand in layman's terms. It's so relative to what we're living in. So thank you so much for your time today. Craig's available on many podcasts himself. So if you want to keep listening to him, please do. Your website is craigharper.net and your tagline is keeping shit real, which is exactly what you do.
Do you notice I didn't swear for how long have we been going?
Last 30 seconds we're allowed to swear.
Oh, are we? Just cut loose a little bit. I've got one question for you.
All right.
So how long have we been going?
Maybe 30, 40 minutes.
I'm going to interview you now. No cost. Wow. No cost. So the dude that wrote A Conversation with God, what's his name again?
Neil Donald Walsh.
Neil. What did you learn from Neil, or what did Neil tell you that resonated?
Neil told me that we are all one and we shouldn't look at ourselves as separate entities. We should look at ourselves as one spiritual entity. And if we look at ourselves in one spiritual entity, then we would never do any harm to anyone else. We would never have any negative thought about anyone else. We would never allow 659 children to die every hour in the world of starvation.
Yes.
If we all looked at ourselves as one.
Collective
and once you hear that, literally, there are 659 children dying every hour in the world of starvation when we probably throw out so much food off our plates and out of our fridges every single day. And when you hear that statement, when you hear it, how do you just not hear it? How do you go on with your life and go, oh, well, I'm just going to continue to throw my food out and waste water and do all of that. And that just, it struck something inside of me to try and help awaken people to that and to be less self-centered and be less self-focused and to just be kinder and more giving. Yeah,
and share that with people and build awareness, but also roll up your sleeves, all of us, and do something practically.
Walk the talk.
Well, good luck with the podcast. It's been nice chatting, and thanks for coming over to the thriving metropolis of Hampton.
It's been so good. You can continue the conversation with me at Maritza_Barone on Instagram and let me know what you thought of Craig and of the show. Make sure you subscribe. There's a lot more to come, and as you know, knowledge is power. Thank you so much, Craig.
Thank you.